Let's read our next chapter of Out of My Mind. The air felt thick and damp like the silence that followed the screaming and crying and sirens. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. After Mom and Dad left with the ambulance, Mrs. V took me out of the car and sat me in my chair. She placed the soggy, filthy doodle on my tray. "I found this under the car," she said, her voice shaky. I touched it and I burst into tears. As she rolled me to her house, she said, "We're going to clean Doodle up and have him waiting for Penny when she comes home, you hear?" I couldn't tell if she was trying to convince me or herself. I felt dizzy. I felt nauseous. I couldn't stop shaking. After changing my clothes into warm, dry sweats, she switched the radio into an easy listening station and turned the volume down low. The only color that I heard was gray. Mrs. V stood behind me, gently rubbing my shoulders. "Are you hungry?" she asked. I shook my head no. She continued to massage my back and shoulders until we could both feel the tension slipping away. "I'm going to go next door and get your Meditalker and the dog," she said. "Do you want anything else?" I shook my head and continued to listen to the tones of smoky gray. When she got back, Butterscotch seemed nervous. She kept pacing and sniffing as if she was looking for something. "I think she's looking for Penny," Mrs. V said. "Dogs know." She hooked Elvira to my chair and switched it on, but there's nothing either of us could say. "It's not your fault, you know," she said finally, and I shook my head forcefully. Mrs. V should know better than just to say stuff just to make me feel better. "I mean it, Melody. It's not your fault." "Yes, it is," I replied on my talker. I turned the volume up loud. Mrs. V walked around to where I could see her, leaned down until her face was just inches from my own. "You did your best to warn your mother. You should be proud of yourself." "Not proud. Not enough," I typed. "Sometimes things happen that are just beyond our control, Melody. You did everything right." The guilt bubbled up. "I was mad at Penny," I typed, slower than usual. "Penny knows you love her," she said. Tears slid down my cheeks. "Made Mom take me to school." "So what? The fact that you insisted on going to school, even what happened to you yesterday, shows you're a strong person. A better person than anyone else there, and I'm proud of you for that." "Don't." "I'm sure Penny's going to be just fine," Mrs. V said, but her voice said otherwise. For the first time I could remember, Mrs. V sounded unsure. "Will she die?" I had to know. She was alive and breathing when the ambulance took her, so I'm going to believe that that's still the case. Toddlers are very resistant, you know. I had to know something else. "Her brain messed up?" I asked. I'd seen enough television shows on brain trauma to know what was possible. My classmate Jill had been in a car accident. I couldn't bear to see Penny like that. Mrs. V answered thoughtfully and honestly. "I suppose it's possible, but I pray that's not the case." 2 broken kids, I typed. Just the idea of it made me gag. "That's not going to happen, Melody." But Mrs. V's voice wavered and I heard it. I was still for a moment, then I typed, "It should have been me." "What? What do you mean?" "Nobody would miss me." Now you don't do stupid talk like that. My whole world would fall apart if something happened to you, and your parents as well. I'm not sure I believed her. I tilted my head. "Really?" I typed. "I plan to wear purple to your college graduation." "Far away and very hard." "Oh, kind of like making the quiz team?" "They left me. And they lost." I glanced out of her large picture window and I watched the wet branches sway. How could I say it? I looked back at my talker and I typed very slowly. "I want to be like other kids." "So you want to be mean and fake and thoughtless?" I looked up at her angry face and then looked away. "No, normal." "Normal stinks," she roared. "People love you because you're Melody, not because of what you can or cannot do, so give us a little credit." "I want it to be yesterday," I typed. "Yesterday, your heart was broken because they left you behind, remember that?" "Rather have that than this." "I know. Melody, I know." "I'm scared." "Me too." The silent room echoed our thoughts. "I had a goldfish. He jumped out of his bowl," I typed. "I remember your mom telling me about that." Tried to save him. Couldn't. The phone rang then, startling both of us. I jerked in my chair and Mrs. V picked it up. Yes, she said. I strained to listen. Oh no, she said. My heart dropped beneath my chair. She listened for a long time. Oh, yes, she said finally. And then she burst into tears and hung up. Is Penny dead? I typed. The world was spinning. Mrs. V wiped her eyes, looked at me, and took a deep breath. She has some internal injuries, a badly broken leg, but she survived the surgery. She's gonna live. Then she cried once more. Normal doesn't really suck after all.